Alright, here's an overhead press video. In the beginning of this video I have all my lifts with commentary, and at the 210 mark I have my mobility and stretches I did before I did these lifts. At 113 is my overhead press PR of 200 pounds. But here I am doing 3 repetitions with 155 pounds, and as I set up and kind of warm myself up to do a PR for the day, the weight is really heavy. One of my biggest problems is that my long head on my tricep and my lats are just so tight, and it makes it difficult to get my hands above my head, get that full lockout. So after I did this, I wasn't feeling too confident, but I know that as I get into it, I'll usually find my groove and I'll get that bar to go more in a straight line. One of the things with the overhead press, you need to make sure that it follows a straight line as much as possible, and you're going to only be able to do that if you put it underneath your chin, pull your head out of the way, and then pull straight up above your head. That's the most ideal way to do it. Here's 185 pounds for 2 reps. This was my that was my PR about 3 weeks ago. And then here is 200 pounds. There's a little bit of a caveat. I do a little bit of an extension, and my hips looks like they drop. If you do it in slow motion, which I'll show later, I do drop a little bit. So I guess not quite true, but good enough. Enough for me to count it as a PR. And then I do a working set of 145 pounds, which is 70% of my 1 rep max, to get some rep work in. And the thing I like about the overhead press, it just really lets me get my lats stretched out, my triceps stretched out, and get into this get better with this overhead position. Because as for most people, especially myself, I struggle with the overhead position because it's just such a hard position to be in. One side is typically tighter than the other. You're such a low leverage position, and if you're very tight, it makes everything so difficult. So I was pretty happy with my progress today. I have to say, I love it when I get these kind of days. These days don't come by too often, but they're great when they do. So here's the stretch. I have a rumble roller, and I'm stretching my upper back and lats, also opening up my chest. And then here I'm just rolling out my lats and upper back to improve my thoracic spine extension. That's usually the problem that most people have when they stretch. Here I'm doing a first rib mobilization where I press the barbell into my first rib as I kind of push my arm up above my head. It's kind of like a foam rolling technique with the barbell as I push up, as I press and push my shoulder blade. Well, it's really just kind of getting that spot in your neck, kind of where your levator scapula is. Here I'm flossing out my tricep, really just trying to break up the tissue in that common tendon of my tricep muscle, so that way I get better overhead positioning and my triceps are a little bit more flexible. And here's a warm-up set with just some light weight, just getting used to pushing my head through the bar, pulling my head back, and then pushing my head through. And then here's one of my favorite stretches that I learned from Kelly Starrett of the mobility WOD, is really opening up those triceps and really trying to extend. And you can see how my arm just has a tough time getting up behind my body. And what I'm doing is I'm just kind of trying to feel where I'm tight. My left side is much better. I get much more external rotation. One thing I try to do here is I try to bias external rotation, and that's simply my wrist moving away from my body. It's a tough position, but this is a really good stretch when you're trying to improve your overhead press position and get better flexibility. Here I'm rolling out. God, I hate this so much. It's so painful, but I roll out my tricep, my teres major, my lats, just what Starrett calls the lateral seam of your body. You're just stretching out your lats, and you're just rolling it out and just breaking up all that tissue, your serratus anterior, all those tissues that just don't get the attention they deserve sometimes. And as I kind of press and find some gnarly spots, what I'm doing is I'm pressing, and then I'm trying to push my arm above my head to really focus on creating better extension and reaching up above my head, because that's a spot that I have trouble with. And that's my workout. Well, at least that's my overhead press segment. So if you enjoyed my video, you got some good stuff out of it, please click like. I'd really appreciate it. If you could share the video, that would be great too. And if you had any other questions, please comment on how I can make some better videos, or maybe some stuff you'd rather see, or maybe some other things I can make videos on. Anyways, thanks a lot, and please subscribe.